Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and I'm here with the Samsung Galaxy Tab, which is a 7-inch Android tablet from Samsung. It's available in the US from 5 major wireless carriers, including AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, and US Cellular, making it one of the first Android tablets to really be widespread in the United States. Also available in Europe and I believe some other locations coming soon. It's a lot larger than a typical Android phone. Here's the Google Nexus 1, for instance. You could sort of fit 3 of these phones, or maybe even 4, into that space. But it's very similar to some other Android tablets I've looked at in the past. Here, for example, is the Ogin GenTouch 78, also has a 7-inch display, or the WePad with a 7-inch display. The difference is in terms of build quality, processor, graphics, everything. The Samsung Galaxy Tab is way ahead of these little cheap tablets, which tend to sell for around $200. The Tab runs between $400 and $650, depending on where you get it. But what it's got is a higher resolution display. It's 1024 by 600. It's multi-touch, capacitive. It's a glass display. In fact, it's Gorilla Glass, meaning it's pretty hard to scratch, pretty hard to break. And although the case is made of plastic, it's pretty high-quality plastic. There's a front-facing camera and also a rear-facing camera. This one's, I believe, a 3-megapixel camera, and this is a 1.3 megapixel. The rear has an LED flash as well as autofocus capabilities. On the sides, you've got volume buttons, power button, SIM card slot, and a micro SD card slot. There's an accelerometer, so the screen will actually rotate as you shift from portrait to landscape, and so forth. There's also an accelerometer, which means that you can play games also that require screen rotation. So I'm going to show you one of those real quick here. So here we've got a racing game, which I accidentally exited, and I moved the camera. But let's try that again. So you can actually control the game this way. And the game looks really great on this 1024 by 600 pixel display. And this is Asphalt 5, by the way, in case you're wondering. Videos also look really excellent on the display. Out of the box, it can handle DivX and XVID formats that aren't necessarily supported by some other devices, as well as H.264, MP4, and some other codecs for audio and video. I also tried out a couple of third-party applications, such as vPlayer and Rock Player for codecs that aren't necessarily supported out of the box. Because these rely on software, they can't do high-definition video very well when you're using an unsupported format. But if you're playing a video that's in one of the supported formats using the default video player, there's actual hardware encoding or hardware decoding support, and so you can actually do high-definition video playback, at which point you should get up to 7 hours of battery life. When using the software decoding in Rock Player and vPlayer, I found probably 5 to 6 hours is more likely. If you're not playing video, if you're not doing those sort of resource-heavy tasks, you should be able to get more like 8 to 10 hours of web surfing and other activities. I loaded a couple of ebook readers on here. Here's how the app looks when reading books. 1024 by 600 pixel display. You can get pretty sharp text if you want. It's screen at 7 inches is larger than some of the small 6-inch Kindle or Nook ebook readers, so it's pretty good overall. And I think it's a good size for reading books. You can swipe through pages left to right here. Depends on the application you're using. This is Aldico. You can also get Kindle or Nook applications or other applications like that. I find that although you can grip the tablet with your hands around the side, it's more comfortable to hold it sort of like you would hold a book in the corner here. Or when you're playing a game, you can hold both sides. In terms of web pages, again, the high-resolution browser is or screen looks great for websites, although you're using the default Android browser here, and what that means is you don't get the full view of a website as you might using other applications. You can install other browsers that let you change the user agent, so you can trick websites like the New York Times into thinking that you're surfing using a full desktop web browser. But overall, nice experience here for viewing web pages, reading books, and so forth. In terms of watching videos, I can definitely see why there's a huge advantage to having this 7-inch screen as opposed to a 3.7-inch screen like the Nexus 1. In terms of reading books, I personally like small screens, but I can see that some people might enjoy the larger screens, or in terms of web browsing. But the thing that I've realized as I've come to use this over the last couple of weeks is there's really not much that the tablet can do that you can't also do on a smartphone. So if you already have a Google Android smartphone, and you really want the larger screen for videos or reading or something along those lines, then maybe something like the Tab makes sense. But unlike the Apple iPad, which has thousands of apps that were really specifically designed for the larger display, things like musical instruments, that you can play a keyboard with your 10 fingers, there aren't a lot of apps that are designed specifically for the larger screen here. And in fact, you run into some applications that were clearly not. So for instance, here's a game called Robo Defense, which you see the big black bars around the side because it's not optimized. Now, there are some hacks that you can use to try to get things to run in full screen, but it just shows that you're going to run that risk of downloading applications that don't play perfectly well, and then you have to move your fingers farther, and you have this extra space around the edges. Hopefully this will change as Google develops new versions of Android that are optimized for higher resolution screens and larger screens, and more third-party developers start to come out with apps along those lines. But right now, it can be a little bit hit or miss. That said, it's a perfectly good Android device. It just doesn't feel to me like it makes a lot of sense to buy an Android phone, pay for a monthly data plan on an Android phone, and something like the Samsung Galaxy Tab, and pay for a monthly data plan on that as well. A Wi-Fi only version without 3G data should be available relatively soon, and if you are just looking for a tablet to use around the house and you don't want an extra mobile plan, that might be a good option. If you don't have a smartphone and you're looking for a way to get online either around the house or get the 3G version and use it elsewhere, might make a lot of sense. Much better than the cheap Android tablets that I've been playing with. The processor's fast, video capabilities are fast, screen rotation has all the buttons that you would want. Although I do find it kind of annoying that when you tap the screen, the buttons light up and they're easy to see. But once they dim, they're actually pretty hard to see, so you kind of have to tap again if you want to find them in low-light situations. But overall, nice device, but I kind of wonder who it's for, especially with a starting price of around $400. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to go over here. This is Brad Linder with... actually, there's one more thing. In terms of the applications that may or may not work perfectly on the larger display, I wanted to go over two more quick things. One, Samsung did put some work into developing some apps, like a calendar application, that are clearly designed for larger displays. I don't really love the color scheme of this calendar, but you can see that there's much more space on the screen. You can do 30 days, plus a detail view here, for instance, or on the week view, you have room for lots of detail on each spot, and this looks even better, I think, in portrait mode. So, I appreciate that Samsung put the effort into that. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is the web browser here brings up the keyboard. It uses the swipe keyboard, which means that you can actually make certain words by moving your finger along without lifting your finger, which works great on smartphones. I'm not sure how necessary it is here, because it's really pretty easy to type, I think, with your thumbs, either in portrait mode or landscape mode. And if you don't like swipe, you can actually disable it and go to the stock Samsung keyboard. But you'll notice that it's really too small for touch typing. So whereas the iPad, you can use your fingers and type as if you were typing on a physical keyboard, it's pretty difficult to do that here. If you have small hands, maybe, but I wouldn't expect to be able to do 40, 50, 60 words a minute here. I think you're probably going to top out at 20 or 30 with thumb typing. But there you go. That's a quick video review of the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7-inch Android tablet. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing.